Welcome to r/Entitled People, where we share stories from your lives about people who think the rules don't apply to them, and they should get what they want. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story, The Epic Battle, Surviving the Nightmare Coworker. The second story, Hotel Showdown, The Tenacious DNR Guest. The third story, Desperation Strikes. Former employees stand strong despite begging calls. The first story is Battle of Wills. I work in a hotel. I started as a housekeeper and I really hated it. I didn't mind the work, but I'm not fast and I was tired of getting in trouble for taking too long, as the housekeepers are paid by the hour. I was looking for other jobs when I noticed my hotel was hiring for the front desk. I asked the manager if that was something current employees could apply for, or if it was against the rules or something. He took me to his office, gave me an interview, and gave me the job that same day, and I started training. At first I was doing housekeeping in the front desk, but eventually I was completely on the front desk and much happier. I got the same pay for a much easier job with a set schedule. The work was fine, and I got on well with the other ladies. Well, almost all of them. See, I covered other people's days off, so I'd work the swing shift and the graveyard shift. But the regular night person, hence known as Karen, hated me. At first I had no idea, and I saw so little of her with such a small amount of interaction that I didn't even realize she hated me at first. Then complaints started popping up. The manager would pull me aside or text or call saying that there had been a customer complaining about how I was dressing. Our uniform is pretty lax. We just have to wear a polo shirt and stick to some basic standards. Modest clothes, not dirty or torn up, that sort of thing. I wasn't too happy about the dress code, as I like to dress well, and polo shirts are kinda lowbrow in my opinion, so I would just wear a plain button-down shirt, which was fine, but eventually I got in trouble for that too, saying that the buttons were too far undone. Then one day at shift change I was getting off the swing and Karen was coming onto the grave, and she started yelling at me for brewing too much coffee. We keep a coffee station for guests, and that opened the floodgates. Every single time she worked after me, she would berate me for not doing something to her satisfaction. At one point, she was yelling at me and calling me a hooker for how I was dressing. Knee-length shirt, uniform polo, tights, and boots that day. I reported her for sexual harassment and creating a hostile work environment, but nothing happened. After that, I started recording everything. It was a nightmare, and it got to the point where I was dreading the end of swing shifts, and I was actually thrilled when I had to cover for her because it meant I didn't have to deal with her. And I did cover for her a lot. She's older and was often out for medical problems, either her own or her husband's. I accepted any and all shifts without argument or issue, even if it wrecked my sleep schedule. I was even covering for personal things like her husband's birthday or a grandkid's school performance. I had more than one person tell me I should stop accepting her shifts, as it was killing my sleep schedule, but I was happier with my roller coaster of sleep times than I was with a normal schedule having to deal with her. There was also one other person who could do night shifts, because you have to be trained to run the audit, and if Karen was out for a week or more I'd cover most of the graveyard, and the other chick would cover my 2 nights off. Then that chick moved away, and Karen and I were the only 2 who knew how to run the audit. We had a few new hires, but none of them lasted long. Keep in mind that this was not a difficult job to do, but they all quit without sticking around for the 2 weeks' notice. Then Karen's grandson gets hired on, and he actually sticks around for a few months. As a coworker, he was pretty meh. I've definitely had worse, but I've certainly had better. SH part was that he would do SH with no repercussions, but if I did something that was even a fraction of something he did, Karen would scream and yell at me. We have an outdoor pool that's open in the summertime, and we don't have a lifeguard or anything, so the pool closes at 10. Graveyard shift starts at 11, so swing usually goes out and locks up the pool, but grave will drive past and make sure that it's locked. I was literally the only person on swing shift who ever actually locked the pool at 10, and I always stopped on my way in to lock it when I worked graves. It opened for the season on a day I had off, and I completely forgot it was open on my next shift. Naturally, this was a sin worthy of the 7 circles of hell, but then I found out a couple of weeks later that the grandson was leaving the pool unlocked literally every day he worked swing, and Karen wasn't locking it either, and if he worked the morning shift, he wouldn't unlock it either. Everyone at my work has a big problem with getting to work on time. Me and one other woman are literally the only 2 who are consistently on time, and usually a little early. Karen, of course, was constantly late, to the point where she stopped even apologizing for it, and her grandson was no better. There was one day that I was on Graves and the manager came in before the grandson because the grandson was an hour late. I would have liked to be a fly on the wall for that A-ripping, but I was too effing tired and I just went home. The grandson was on for a few months, but found a different job with better pay and left, and another chick was hired and things were fine. Then the grandson's job fell through and he tried coming back to the hotel, but his replacement had already been hired. I was friendly with the new chick. We'd chat at shift change, and one day the subject of Karen came up. Apparently Karen had been nice to new chick at first, and everything was fine, but then the grandson tried to get his old job back, was turned away, and Karen started whistling a different tune. She was being as horrible to new chick out of absolutely nowhere, and this is where the pieces fell into place. You see, before I moved up from housekeeping, Karen's grandson was looking like the most likely candidate for the front desk job, but I'd gotten it instead, and angered the Kraken. She was treating me so horribly because she was trying to get me to quit, and when that didn't work, she was complaining to the manager about me and making false reviews from customers. And that wasn't all. When the other desk position opened up, she was terrorizing everyone that got hired to get them to quit, so her grandson could be rehired. And when the grandson wanted his old job back, she started harassing the new chick. I had been looking at new jobs to get away from Karen, but this is when I decided to dig my heels in. I grew up with 3 siblings and an army of cousins. I know how to take my licks. Yelling at me over coffee? B, please. My cousins are the reasons you now have to be over 18 to buy dry ice at the local grocery store. Our parents dropped us on a farm, and we ran wild, unsupervised for hours at a time. I grew up in active combat with my siblings and cousins. This is nothing. I continued working, doing everything perfectly. I was taking pictures of everything I'd cleaned, and I'd take a picture of my outfit at work every single night, so I could just show the manager what I was wearing whenever there was a customer complaint. And I continued taking every last one of her shifts that she needed me to cover, to the point where I was going full days without a wink of sleep. She continued harassing me and the new chick, even after her grandson got a new job, and new chick also wound up quitting without notice, leaving us scrambling to cover shifts. Karen managed to get 4 separate people to quit, but I withstood her abuse for 2 years. Then it happened. I won't give details, but there was a health crisis that resulted in her having to quit and I got her job. I'm not the main graveyard shift and living my best life free of Karen. She thought she was an unstoppable force until she met an immovable object. Eat A, Karen, I survived. You couldn't even secure your grandson the easiest job I've literally ever had, and now I don't have to deal with either of you ever again. Amazing story. How in the world could this have been endured for so long? This woman Karen sounds like a real nightmare. She was so vicious and persistent that even 7 circles of hell wouldn't have been enough for her. To go through something like that on the job, it's really unbelievable. You were a true hero, not giving up in the face of her terror, and on the contrary, continuing to perform at the highest level. Your stamina and determination is impressive. You destroyed her with kindness and acted as if everything was fine when she tried to sabotage you. But in the end, justice prevailed and Karen had to go. You got her job and can now enjoy freedom from her tyranny. This is a story of good triumphing over evil, and that perseverance and willpower can overcome the toughest challenges. You're a true example to us all. Congratulations on this well-deserved victory. Way to go, girl. The second story is first time dealing with a DNR guest. At one of my old hotel jobs, we also had a DNR guest try to check in. My bosses at the time, front desk manager and general manager, always wanted guests filling up rooms even if they were huge jerks, and never had the front desk agents' backs. But one day they randomly decided to DNR a guest I'll call B. I didn't know this until days after they decided this, but I was glad they told me because she happened to stop by that day. To give an idea as to why B was banned and why nobody liked her, she had 2 kids and was a terrible mother to them. They had no boundaries or restrictions, so her daughters destroyed every room they rented by putting glitter glue in the carpet, stuffing taffy into the blow dryer, and clogged whatever they could, such as the toilets and sinks. Anyway, FDM told me if B comes in, tell her we're full and cannot rent her a room. He also mentioned if she books online, the third party, who she typically books through if not through us directly. Just after my FDM decided to take a smoke break that evening, B happened to walk in through the door requesting the usual kind of room she asked for. I was a terrible liar at the time, so I avoided eye contact. I proceeded to tell her we're full and have no rooms available. She was confused because it was a weeknight in the winter, so that usually isn't the case, but I kept lying to her, as instructed, and told her there was a bunch of students on a field trip here. B accepted the news and left. About half an hour later, she made a reservation through a third party and prepaid. When I brought it up to the FDM, he told me to call the third party to get her reservation canceled because she's DNR'd. The third party was fine with it and did refund her money. Later, I received a random call asking if we had rooms available, to which I had a suspicion it was her, but still told the caller we had rooms available. Sometime after that, B left a scalding review online saying the company that manages us is awful. Every hotel they run sucks, and that all the employees are the worst. Everyone laughed about it because she failed to mention we've only ever been kind to her, even though she was one of the worst guests we've had. The company deleted B's review, and funny enough, she continued trying to book a room with us for a while after that. People can be so weird. Unbelievable and incredibly annoying how some guests can be like this. How can you behave in such a way, destroying rooms and not worrying about how it affects other guests and the hotel staff? Literally every aspect of this B guest's behavior was unacceptable, and I'm shocked how she even has the nerve to claim this hotel. She knows exactly what damage your family has done to the property. It's ridiculous. You're lucky you were warned about her, but I don't think it was enough. There should be a protocol whereby DNR guests are escorted off the premises as soon as they check in, not to let her walk around freely. Front desk staff should be protected and supported by management, especially when it comes to guests who behave like B. But your decision to stand on the side of fairness and abide by DNR policy was the right one. I hope you don't encounter any more guests like this in the future. The third story is, previous employer is now calling dozens of former employees begging them to come back. I live in a relatively small town in Canada. Our economy largely depends on fishing and tourism, though we do have a local call center that at one point within the last 3 years employed about 700 people. As most call centers do, it had insane turnover rates. I mean, within a year of my training class, I was one of 2 employees left. The contract I was on was for an American health insurance company, mainly dealing with Medicare claims. For $12.75 an hour, we often had to tell people their life-saving prescriptions were not covered, and there's nothing we can do about it. It was at times soul-crushing, and managers never once cared about the mental health of the staff. During hard times for the world, our managers had weekly meetings asking if we were okay. Whether we were or not, nothing had changed. We were referred to the standard employee helpline, and that was the end of it. They also fought back until the last possible moment to move to a work-from-home model, and once we were working from home, they attempted to enforce cameras in everyone's house so they can be checked on during breaks, after call, personal time, aka 8 minutes a day. People left in droves. Nobody on my 20-plus person team is still working there. Out of about 250 people on our contract alone, I'd say about 70% of them left. Just recently, I received calls, and several of my former coworkers have been receiving calls begging us to come back. No pay raise, no guaranteed hours, shift bid only, nothing to entice anyone to return. Coincidentally, the last of the unemployment relief had ran out, so they think we're all desperate. But we aren't. Everyone I've talked to went back to school, started their own business, or found a job they're passionate about. They're desperate for staff, yet cannot get their heads out of their A's to realize nobody's coming back without a raise, and it's what they deserve. Every time I hear someone else was called, I have to laugh. Even in nowhere Canada, where poverty is rampant, workers know their worth. What a treat to see a call center that didn't value its employees, now moaning and begging for them to come back. This is a real lesson for the employer who ignored the state of mind of their employees and undervalued their talents. How amusing to see that they offer no bonuses or pay rises, and just hope for the desperation of the people who have left. But the employees don't seem to give in so easily. They've left and found better opportunities, started their own business, or found a job that inspires them. So yes, let the call center managers keep calling and begging. No one's coming back. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.